So the first thing I want to do is just generally talk about what the web is, what the internet is, to like a just crash course, a level 101 into that world. So you have an understanding of kind of what we're dealing with and what we're working with on the technological side. So this is the internet. It was created initially in 1982. And it was originally designed mainly just for researchers and scientists at universities and research facilities to share their data, share their findings. It was also funded by the government. So when people say Al Gore invented the internet, it's basically saying that a political commission was created. I believe Al Gore was like the chairman of that commission, who then funded the research and development of building the internet infrastructure. But the internet is basically just a bunch of cables connecting different areas, connecting different countries and continents. These lines are all the underwater sea cables that are connecting different countries and continents. So all these cables are physical cables that they ran underwater to connect the entire world with these massive cables. So the internet is just this infrastructure. It's just a cable system that is connecting everyone to each other. That's all it is, just the physical infrastructure. Oops. So there is a pretty cool website that, can you see that? Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. So there was an article. I'm pretty sure sharks are sometimes attracted to these underwater sea cables, but they're pretty, I mean, they're pretty sturdy and hardy. So it would take a lot for it to be like chewed apart by a shark. But yeah, so if you are curious, like where these cables are, this website, this submarinecablemap.com, shows you all of the different underwater cables that are connecting these countries and continents together. You can hover over each one of these, click on them, and learn more about that particular cable and who owns it. So all these physical cables are laid by either organizations or governments. So someone owns these. Someone owns the internet. Basically, it's not open and free necessarily. So these cables are owned and paid for by, like this one is paid for by Google. It shows you the landing point, so where the cables land to certain countries and continents. So this particular one lands in Spain and Bilbao, the UK, and then in Bellport, New York. So you click on each one of these to learn more about it. This one is owned by Tata Communications. And I think most of these now are fiber optic cables. And I read somewhere that, yeah, I read somewhere that with fiber optic cables, you can actually like bend the cable and some of the light will escape. So you can kind of hack the cables and get that data. I don't know how true that is because these are pretty massive cables, but technically and theoretically speaking, I guess that's possible. So yeah, so this is a pretty great site to just kind of click around and learn more about how the internet is like infrastructure is technically put together and who owns these cables, because it's not just, you know, free and open. It wasn't paid for, you know, randomly by some random person out of the goodness of their heart. These are paid for by companies and they own them, and you're running your data across these wires that are owned by organizations and companies. So I think it's good for you to know that and think about that and know that your data is being sent from A to B over a cable that is owned by a company or maybe a government. So yeah, it's just something to think about. So that was 1982 when the internet was invented, but it wasn't really until 1989 when this guy, Sir Tim Berners-Lee, invented the World Wide Web. The World Wide Web was a way for us to access the internet for free. Before the World Wide Web, you had to basically pay to get access to the internet. That's why mostly universities and research facilities were using the internet, because you had to pay. It was pay to play. You had to pay to gain access to it. We do still pay for it through internet service providers. So technically, it is still pay to play, but it's a lot cheaper than what it used to be. Before, it was like tens of thousands of dollars a month or something to gain access to it. Now it's what, depending on your carrier and your plan, it could be like $20 a month, $30 a month. There are free ways of getting access to the internet too, like especially in New York. There is an open mesh network that you can kind of be a part of. You just have to buy the hardware for it. But that's an option that's technically not free because you have to buy the hardware, but you don't have to pay a monthly charge or anything, and you're not giving money to like a soulless organization like Verizon or Comcast or anything like that. So yeah, check that out if you're interested. So yeah, so the World Wide Web, invented in 1989 by this guy to make it, okay, maybe not free, but a lot easier to access the internet. He invented HTTP, which is the hypertext protocol, transfer protocol that we use to, when we type in like google.com, we're using HTTP protocol to get to that website and view it on our screen. He also invented HTML, which is what we use for all websites, which stands for Hypertext Markup Language. And then he also invented the hyperlink, which is basically just a link from one site to another site by clicking on a hyperlink. So he's really credited for giving access to the internet through the World Wide Web to anyone and everyone in the world. Just made it a lot more accessible. So before there was, Google or Bing and like these search engines, Yahoo was really the first to try to organize the internet into categories, just to make it easier to find what you need that you're interested in. So Yahoo in 1995 created basically a website with just a bunch of hyperlinks. And at the time, what you had to do to get onto this, I guess, search engine was you had to email someone at Yahoo with a link to your website, and then they would add it to their database on their website. So it's just basically just a bunch of hyperlinks. That was initially the first search engine for the World Wide Web and the internet. And yeah, so that was the precursor to Bing and Google. First e-commerce site. Anyone have any ideas on like what company was the first to sell a product online? It was 1994.
Amazon? I have no idea on Amazon's.
eBay?
Yeah.
eBay?
Amazon? No. Wait, there's like a lot, aren't they? Like there's Amazon, there's eBay.
Yeah, but who was the first?
AliExpress?
What was it?
AliExpress?
I have a feeling, no, I think that's like in the early 2000s that thing came out.
But I'll give you a hint. It's food related.
Food.
Yeah.
Okay. Food. I love food.
Food related, or like the title is related to food?
Both.
Okay.
Oh.
Okay. What was so popular back
I
then?
was gonna say
Panda
What was
Express.
the
Alpha for a second,
popular
but-
food item back then?
Wait, is that an island or a restaurant?
It's
You're
a
talking about-
restaurant that still exists today. I heard someone say the food item.
It's not Panda Express then.
Yeah, that's close. It's Pizza Hut.
Pizza
Oh.
Hut.
Pizza
I
Hut.
didn't know
That's
Pizza
like
Hut
the
was.
last thing in my
What?
mind.
Exactly.
I knew it.
I haven't thought about Pizza Hut.
I was about to
in
say
years.
McDonald's. McDonald's was so popular
Ah.
from right.
No, yeah, Pizza Hut was
Wow.
the very first company to create like an e-commerce website. It's not like, seamless like what we have today, anything like that. Basically what it was just a website and a form that said, give me your name, give me your street address, and then give me your phone number. And when you submit that, it gets sent to Pizza Hut, and then they call you and ask what you want, and then they bring it to you. So it's not like, I mean, you could just pick up the phone and call Pizza Hut because it's basically the same process that this e-commerce website goes through. But it was the first company to do something that was e-commerce related on the web. And obviously we have Seamless, we have Uber Eats, we have lots of other options now. But yeah, they were the first to kind of dabble in this world of like e-commerce and selling things online.
I would think that maybe McDonald's would do this first,
Yeah,
but they didn't.
no, Pizza
No,
Hut was
but-
pretty innovative back then.
Damn.
Yeah.
So McDonald's is slow. They were popular, but they're slow.
Yeah, they weren't the
Pizza
first.
Hut. When was the last time I had Pizza Hut in this house? Like, 2 years ago. When was the last time any one of us ate Pizza Hut?
But yeah, so that's kind of cool. So yeah. So when it comes to how to build a website for the web and for the internet, these are the languages that you really need to have a basic understanding of. So there's HTML, and it stands for Hypertext Markup Language, is for any text or just general content that you're going to display, like paragraphs and headers, images, stuff like that. You're going to be using HTML, and this is what it looks like. So that's a bit of HTML code. CSS stands for Cascading Style Sheets, and that's what you use for any design or style, so any color or layout, anything like that, you're going to be using CSS. This is what CSS looks like. This H1 stands for header 1, and these brackets are any of the parameters that should be applied to that HTML element. So color, typeface, padding, margin, kerning, anything like that would be inside of these two brackets and get applied to that H1 element. And then the last thing is JavaScript, and this is for anything that's requires any sort of like web-based animation or high-level interactivity would be used for JavaScript. And this is just a little bit of code that is JavaScript. So it's called an alert function. And there's like annoying pop-up things that you get. Those when you go to a website, those are alert boxes. So this is how you create one of those, just an alert function. And then in these brackets, you can pass in some text, and it's just say, like, in this case, it would pop up and say, hi, class. So that's JavaScript. So we're really going to focus on HTML and CSS in this class. And again, and most of that is going to be focused on like towards this in the second half of the semester. And then we'll touch upon JavaScript a little bit towards the end of the semester. So to be able to view anything online, everyone has to go through some sort of web browser that can take the code and then turn it into something more visually interesting, visually stimulating. So there are a number of options out there for web browsers, but these are really the top 5. This is a little bit old, so it might have changed over the last couple of years, but it's probably the top 5. So Chrome, Firefox, Opera, Safari, and then Internet Explorer. Variety is normally great when it comes to most things, but when it comes to front-end website development, it can be a bit of a headache. Since all of these browsers were created by different companies, what you program for your website can look different from one to the next. Especially when you're dealing with Internet Explorer. For some reason, that one is just a pain in your butt to design and program for. It's just awful. On top of that, you also have to think about like version control. So different browsers have different versions. Most of these days get automatically updated to the latest version of the browser, like behind the scenes. But there's still some people that are like on old browsers, on old machines. So I mean, those are few and far between these days, but it's still possible that you can get someone on like Internet Explorer like 3 from like 1998 or something, and it just looks awful whenever it loads your website. So yeah, so that's something that you have to consider. There's platforms that you can run tests to look at how your website looks on all of these different browser windows. But again, just something to keep in mind when you're designing and mostly building a website. So this is, again, pretty old, but this is kind of a breakdown of the popularity of browsers. So Chrome is by far the more popular browser that most of the world uses. I would say Firefox is probably secondary, and then Internet Explorer, Safari, and then Opera, and some of the other smaller ones. But there's also a great website called caniuse.com that allows you to look at what different HTML elements and more CSS elements you can use for different browsers. And then let's see, it has compare browsers. So you can compare browsers and see what you can use in that browser. I thought it had like a so I'll tell you if it's supported or not supported. So this is just a helpful tool to check out when it comes to using different CSS elements and HTML elements. So yeah, so that's kind of cool to check out. Any questions so far? Okay. Okay, so when it comes to connecting and viewing websites, all of these websites are living somewhere on some computer somewhere in the world, and that computer is called a web server. It's basically just a computer that is always on and always connected to the internet. And it houses websites like the HTML and CSS and JavaScript code for the websites that you're loading in your browsers, as well as like databases. So all the data that like Facebook and Twitter have behind the scenes that are powering their platforms, those all live on servers. Again, it's just a computer that is always on, always powered on, and always connected to the internet. That being said, any computer could be a web server. So traditionally, when you think of web servers, you think of these huge rooms with these stacks of computer servers, something like this. But it could be like your laptop or your iMac. You can turn that into a web server. I used a Raspberry Pi, which is like a little tiny computer that's, I think, only costs like $50 or $30, and I turned
Because-
that into a web server.
I'm
Yeah.
sorry, big question. One of those big things, the machines, the web servers,
Mhm.
will be installed in a house, in a building, right? Like a big
Yeah,
house.
it could be anywhere. Like these are probably in like a basement somewhere, like
Ah,
underneath
that makes
Google.
sense.
I know Google
Oh,
has their own web servers in Chelsea underneath
that makes
their
sense.
offices.
No, because my father, he works in Florida. He has his own business. It's electronics, future sound technology. I always wonder when I was a child, what are those? My dad just said, "Oh, it's the internet, sweetie." He goes to many people, his companies, like he goes to many of his customers, go inside a building, a home theater, a hotel this one time I remember, and he has to put everything up. Like he did everything from scratch. And I keep asking him, he said, "It's the internet, okay? Watch cartoons, it's the internet." I'm like, "But Dad, you
Yeah.
didn't ask my now I could call him."
Yeah,
He's gonna laugh at me.
that's funny. Yeah,
How
yeah.
much
These are all
gigabytes
web
is that? Like,
servers. What?
how much storage is that? Like the whole thing, like one.
It's really infinite because you keep on adding to it. So one of
Oh,
these like cabinets probably has like racks of server,
different machines, right? Different machines,
uh,
different stuff. Okay.
and each one of these, see all these bundles of cables.
Mm-hmm.
They're Ethernet cables that are connected to each one of those server computers that is then connected to the internet.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So and then you could just kind of, as long as you have the room
Mm-hmm.
and the power to power all of these machines, you can just keep on adding to it and growing them and adding more like cabinets of stacks of servers. The only other thing they have to consider is these produce a lot of heat, so you have to have really good air conditioning systems or a good way to cool down these machines. Otherwise, they could like get burnt out.
That makes sense now. Why my dad put up the AC in the house. That makes so much sense. Thank you.
Yeah,
You have answered my question since I was like, I don't know, 10.
that's great. I'm glad I could clarify it. So yeah, I don't know if any of you are like really into cryptocurrency or like anything like that, but um, if you've heard about like Bitcoin and like server farms for Bitcoin, it's basically the same thing. It's just these stacks of computers that are mining Bitcoin and processing the uh, different transactions for Bitcoin. So again, that's all just basically just huge servers, but they're specifically designed to process Bitcoin transactions. So yeah, so servers again is just a computer always on that's connected to the internet. And this is a server that I have, like it's probably the size, like that size, like I don't know, 3 inches by 2 inches. And I converted that to a server that's running in my house, so I can have my own websites running off of this little Raspberry Pi computer. And then this is the very first server that ever existed. This is Tim Berners-Lee's web server from 1989. Again, it's just a computer. It's plugged into the internet and should always be powered on. He actually had an issue, and that's why the sticker is here. Every night, janitors used to come in to his research facility and like clean up and unplug everything. So when they unplugged this computer, the whole World Wide Web would just go down. So he put the sticker on there that says, "This machine is a server, do not power down." Because that's basically the internet, or basically the World Wide Web. Yeah, it's pretty crazy. So this was the very first server, but now obviously it's changed to these huge server farms that are in like basements and like really anywhere. Okay, so the next thing you also have to think about is, because most of us aren't going to be building our own servers, you can buy space and rent space on other people's servers for your own websites. So that's what most people do. So there's like DreamHost, GoDaddy, Rackspace, Amazon Web Services, and Glitch. And those are all web hosting companies. So basically they have these huge server farms, and you pay them money to rent space on their server farms where you can host your own website. So that is what most people do when they build a website and launch it to the web, to the internet. We're going to be using Glitch in this class. Glitch is a great platform because it's a programming environment. You can program directly on their website and then also host your websites on their platform. And it's all for free. If you wanted to upgrade, if you wanted to have like your own domain name, like danywoo.com or something, then you could pay a little bit more. Or if you wanted your website to never go to sleep, when a website goes to sleep, and anyone that goes to that website, it usually takes a minute for it to load and wake up. So you could pay for that to constantly be, awake essentially. But for the purposes of this class, the free option is totally fine. So that's what we're going to be using in this class to both program and to host our websites. Cool. Okay, so let's take a look at how this whole request website request works. So there's a client on a web device like a computer or a laptop or a phone, and that client is making a request to a server. And that server through like a URL like danywoo.com or qc.cuny.edu, and they're requesting that the code, the HTML, CSS, and JavaScript code be sent back to them. And when it's received, it's viewed in a browser and converted from code into a visual format that's easy for us to see and navigate and understand. So there are many different server-side and database languages, including like PHP, Python, Ruby, Perl. The list goes on and on and on. None of these we're going to cover in this class. That's all considered back-end development and back-end programming. We are just going to focus on the front-end side, the front-end development, the stuff that gets sent to the browser, which is HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. So those are the only languages that the browser window like Chrome and Safari really care about. They take those three languages and convert that into something that's visual and easy for us to read and navigate. So this is all we're going to focus on in this class. I'm thinking about putting together like a Web Design 3 course, which would cover backend development at some point, but that hasn't materialized yet. So yeah, so just HTML and CSS and JavaScript is kind of the main focus for this class. So let's try and illustrate how web users can be really anywhere in the world and request pages from servers in other parts of the world. For example, in Vancouver, if someone in Vancouver goes to airindia.in, they're probably requesting a website on a server that lives in like Bangalore, India, or something like that. If someone is in, let's say, Stockholm and visits qantas.com.au, they're probably getting a website from a server that's based in Sydney. And someone here in New York visits like google.com, they're probably requesting a server from a site from a server in San Francisco, or potentially in New York in the Google offices too. So a server could be anywhere in the world, and when we type in like a domain name like google.com, we could be getting our HTML, CSS, and JavaScript from a server anywhere else in the world. It could be anywhere. It's not like we're getting it from our next door neighbor or something like that. It could be anywhere in the world. So these are the basic 4 steps that everyone goes through when visiting a website. You first connect to the web via an internet service provider, an ISP, like Optimum or Verizon or Comcast. There's hundreds and hundreds of ISPs that are in existence today. So yeah, there's lots of options. Unfortunately, depending on where you live, you only have so many options. Like where I live, I only have Optimum. There's Optimum and Frontier. That's it, and Frontier is awful. Optimum is slightly better, still awful. So yeah, so unfortunately, for the most of us, we're stuck with an ISP that we have to pay a monthly fee for to gain access to the web. So let's say that we're in Cambridge. When we connect to the web, we're making requests for a web page like google.com or dannywu.com or qc.cuny.edu. All of these are called domain names. So it's a much easier way to like give someone kind of like a home address. It's an easier way to give them an address to where our website lives. And then when we type in like google.com or dannywu.com, that domain name goes to a domain name system or DNS server, which it's asking a question, and the DNS server is sending us back the IP address for the server that the site lives on. And the IP address is the actual address where that server lives. So every internet connection, every device has an individualized IP address. So we know exactly where to get the data for that website that we're requesting. So again, we are in Cambridge and we type in dannywu.com, and dannywu.com lives on a domain name system server in London. So we're requesting the IP address using the domain name on a server in London. That IP address that is given back to us, that is connected to like dannywu.com, is in this case connected to a web server that is based in Paris. That web server in Paris has all my HTML, CSS, and JavaScript code on it, and gets sent back to me in Cambridge. And then that all gets visualized in a browser. So that's basically how it works when it comes to any website that we go to. We type in a domain name like dannywu.com. That domain name goes to a domain name server, which gives us an IP address, which is normally like, I don't know, 12.345.567.99 or something like that. That's what an IP address looks like. And then the IP address is the address for where my code lives on the servers, wherever that may be. And then that code gets sent back to us and gets visualized in Chrome or Internet Explorer or Safari or something like that. So it's a little complicated because we're making a request for a domain name, which is giving us an IP address, which is making a request to another server, which is then giving us the data. But that's how it works. That's what's going on there. Any questions about that or anything?
So technically the information goes around, right? What you saying? It goes in a big circle.
Yeah, it's kind of like 2 circles, to be honest. So the first circle is we're typing in like dannywu.com or google.com, and then that domain name is attached to an IP address. And then we get the IP address, and then that gets sent to where that server lives. So we could also just type in the IP address directly. instead of like dannywu.com. It's just not very easy for most people to remember, like 111.387.945.26, something like that. That just doesn't, doesn't roll off the tongue very easily. It doesn't look good on a business card. So that's why we have domain names that are a lot easier for us to share, like google.com. So google.com is connected to an IP address, and that IP address is where our code lives. That make sense?
Yes.
Sort of. Okay, any other questions? Yeah, we're kind of getting into like IT infrastructure with this talk, but it's okay. Okay, so the next thing that you also have to think about when you're designing and building a website these days are all the thousands and thousands of different devices that we have out there. So there's laptops, there's desktops, there's tablets and smartphones, there's gaming devices, there's e-readers, where you can view a website. Most people obviously are looking at it on like a laptop. Actually, most people are looking at it on their like iPhone or Android these days. But some people are looking at it on like an iPad or an Android tablet or laptop or desktop machine, internet connected TV. There's lots of different things out there where you can view a website. And because of that, there's lots of different dimensions and screens where you can view it, and resolutions. So you could be viewing something on a massive like desktop display, or you could be viewing something on like an Apple Watch. So it scales. The scale is pretty dramatic when it comes to the different possibilities of where a website can be viewed and live. So we're going to talk about like responsive website development as well. So using mostly CSS to change the design of your website based off of the dimensions of the browser window that it's being viewed on. And usually these days you want to do mobile first. So you design for a phone first, and then change that design for other devices after. So mobile first is kind of the way to go these days, since most people are viewing stuff on their phone. But I don't know if you guys remember this project I showed you last week or 2 weeks ago, Splat, which is the bird pooping game that I made with 2 friends of mine. This is basically just 3 big websites on a massive screen. So this is kind of just the extreme of what you can kind of view a website on. This is a 120-foot by 20-foot video wall. But again, this is just a giant website essentially. So it could be most people aren't lucky enough to have a 120-foot by 20-foot video wall as their computer display. But I just kind of want to point out that your websites can be viewed on pretty much any dimensions, any size imaginable. So the other thing that I just want to briefly talk about is internet connected devices. So the Internet of Things is quickly becoming a much more common thing, where all of our devices are connected to the internet in some way and sending and receiving data from a server somewhere. So this is one project that a friend of mine made. It's called the Descriptive Camera. Let's see, is this a video? No, okay. And this is a internet connected camera that when you hold it up to something and take a picture, that image that it captures gets sent to someone over the internet to look at and then type a description of the image, And then that description is what gets sent back to this camera and actually gets printed out. So you're not getting a printout of the picture itself, you're getting a printout of the description of that picture. But it's just an interesting way to kind of play around with internet connected devices. It's like an artistic project. So it's not like, something that's going to go to market or anything that's going to take over like the iPhone camera or anything like that. But it's just a good example of how some things can be connected to the internet and be used in interesting ways. Here's another one. This is a product. It's called Botanicals. And it's basically a device that you put in the soil of potted plants, and it senses when the plant needs water and tweets a message to its owner to water it. So again, this is connected to the internet, and that allows this device to sense something and then send a message over the internet to its owner saying, water me, basically. But there's lots of different internet connected things on the market these days. Pretty much all new cars are connected to the internet. There are like scales that are internet connected. There are thermostats that are internet connected. There's lights that are internet connected. And it's basically just kind of expanding outside of like a computer or a smartphone and going to all of the devices that we use on a regular basis. So just out of curiosity, does anyone have any like internet connected devices in their house, like light switches or lights, scales, toothbrushes?
Google?
Yeah, there's Hello Google.
There's Google and Alexa, no?
Yeah. So those are, some good ones.
Oh, iRing, is that one? iRing?
No, it's I think part of the Nest family.
Oh, I do have a Nest somewhere upstairs.
Oh,
We do have one in this house, but it's kind of, is it good? I don't know. My dad is kind of, he wants to take it off.
really?
Yeah, I don't know what happened. Everything was going great, but every time he trying to change it a little bit. He's in charge of it. I don't know with men. I don't know with dads about the thermostat.
Yeah.
But he switched it to Google, the
Mhm.
Google one. He switched that.
All right.
He
Yeah,
put
I
the
think-
Google upstairs, but he left the Nest alone. Every time I try to touch it, I think it's turned off. I don't know. I think he gave up.
Okay. Yeah, I think with all of those, like the Nest specifically, it's trying to use like machine learning and artificial intelligence to predict what temperature you prefer based off of like the temperature outside and the time of day. So it's a little finicky initially because it changes on you based off of what it thinks you want. So you kind of have to train it over like a couple months, and then it kind of gets better. But yeah, so yeah, I have let's see, I have the Nest, which is internet connected. I have the internet connected lights. I have internet connected light switches. My garage door is internet connected. I have solar panels on my roof that are internet connected. I have Amazon Alexa. I'm not talking to you. Which is internet connected. What else do I have? Oh, all of my TVs are smart TVs and they're all internet connected. Apple TV. So yeah, most of my house is just like a bunch of robots that are spying on me, essentially. But yeah, so yeah, it's good to like think of this and notice this and realize how many things are connected to the internet that you use regularly. I mean, I think it's good to be aware of it, but it's also kind of terrifying when you think about it too deeply.
So I do have one question.
Yeah.
So I find out that YouTube advertising are really creepy because every time when I'm talking about something, some object or like traveling, some,
Mhm.
the things I said, I didn't even type on internet, but it just showed up, it's like they are listening. It's kind of creepy.
Yeah, I heard about that, and it's so, I don't even know how to describe it, but it's so sneaky.
It's really scary.
Like one time I went to like a storage facility, right? Like once. I never typed it into a search bar. I don't even remember talking about it that much. Like I went to a storage facility. I'm still getting ads for storage facilities like a month later. Leave me alone.
I just want to mention it's because that might be because you have your GPS on. And
That's probably it.
yeah, so when you make a stop at a certain spot that's supposed to be for, I don't know, for the public, for tourists and stuff, they ask you for reviews, and that's how they circle that whole propaganda, and that's on it.
Google really thinks I need space, I guess.
Well, I didn't turn on my location stuff, but it's really creepy. I just talking
social
about it.
media in general. Your phone always hears you, and
They say the series always here.
Yeah, I mean, I talk about this in my data visualization class, but data is really more valuable than anything else these days, and all these companies are collecting a ton of it on you. And based off all of that information, they can accurately determine what you're interested in and what you might want to buy, who you might want to talk to, really where you might want to go, anything. So it's a little creepy when it comes to the amount of data that's being collected on you, from Facebook, Instagram, iPhone, Android, location-based data, browsing data. All that information is being collected, and most of it's being sold to like advertising companies. My wife actually works for Verizon Media, which was recently bought, and now it's back to Yahoo. And she works in ad tech, so I kind of get an inside look into all of the information and how this works behind the scenes, and it's very creepy. So I don't know if they're necessarily listening to everything you say. They could be. They say they don't, but they could be doing that. There's so many devices out there that have mics on them that they could be. But I think it has more to do with just like all the other data that they're collecting on you, and like your browsing habits and where you go, geographic data, where they can determine exactly what you would be interested in, and then serving you an ad for that. So the whole world of data is really interesting, really creepy. It kind of makes you want to move to the middle of the woods and throw out all your electronics and tinfoil the roof, but no one's going to do that. So it's kind of like you have to choose your battles and determine if you are okay with all this information being taken from you and used not necessarily for good purposes, in return for like all these devices and like apps and things that really kind of make your life a lot easier and more, just a lot easier. So you can turn off like the all of the tracking geolocation stuff on your phones, but then you don't get to use like apps like Uber or Seamless because they use the GPS to find where you are. So yeah, so it's give and take, essentially. Cool. Yeah, and then the like cars are internet connected, and that's a whole scary thing because there's been like really obvious examples of ways to hack them and take control of the car. So I think that's getting better because internet security is just generally getting better. But in the past, it was like maybe like 5, 6, 7 years ago, the security behind the connection to these cars was pretty terrible. Yeah. So food for thought. Any questions? Okay. All right, so why don't we take like a 10-minute break, 12-minute break, and come back at like 3:30, and then we'll talk about discovery. Sound good?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Just turn off your camera and
How
like,
long?
mute yourself. Oops. Okay. So, any questions before we begin? All right. Okay. So again, these are the 4Ds: discovery, define, design, and develop. And this is kind of the basic structure of how this class is designed. Discover is what we're going to be focusing on today. So the first thing that we're going to do for discover, again, discover is basically just the research behind any site that we build before we actually design or build it. So we understand who we're designing for, who the audience is, who's our competition, etc. So that's where we have to start. So the first thing we're going to talk about is doing competitive audits and market analysis. So traditionally, at like most design agencies, market analysis is done by a brand strategist, and a competitive visual audit is done by a designer or website designer. But we're going to act as both of those roles for this class. So here's just kind of a little example. So let's say we're looking at Brooklyn College as our client. So for the market analysis, the strategy behind this project, some of the questions that we want to ask and find answers for are: who is our market? Who's going to be coming to Brooklyn College? Who are we trying to attract to Brooklyn College through the website? Who is the user? Who are those individuals that we want to target to bring them to Brooklyn College? And who are our competitors? What other similar colleges or universities would kind of students or potential students look at in addition to Brooklyn College? So what is your market? So when it comes to Brooklyn College, what do you guys think the market would be?
Students.
Yeah, you could think like more higher level.
The community itself of Brooklyn College, besides students, there's faculties, the staff of different departments.
Right.
What does each department do? Like there's a science department, business department, maybe an arts department, news department, if they have their own articles to do.
Right. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, it could be teachers,
question.
students, staff. Yeah.
Could you like, I guess, how do I word this? Like, what's the difference here between like the market and the user exactly?
So the user would be like the individual, and the market is kind of like the industry that it's in. So for market for this particular client would probably be something like higher education or continuing education.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah. And then the potential users would be, so I heard some like users already. So could be potential teachers, potential staff. What else? Who else? Who else would be
Like
coming to the
rising
Brooklyn College
seniors
website? Mm-hmm.
or people who
High
want to
school
go into the
students.
graduate program. Yeah.
Yeah, people interested in graduate programs. Anyone
Uh,
else?
Sponsorships, like internships, scholarships, all the ships.
Yeah, those are all great. Yeah, definitely. So potential maybe employers that are looking to hire, maybe people that are looking to donate or collaborate with a school. So yeah, this is kind of what I put together, but obviously that list can go on and on. So like high school students, rising seniors, maybe parents are interested in looking at the site too. And really anyone interested in furthering their education. But again, it could be someone that's like looking for a teaching position, looking for a staff position, looking to donate money to an organization or college, looking for like corporate collaboration with the university. So it could be any number of things and different types of people. So I think it's good to have a long list and then kind of focus on the ones that are more likely to be the majority. So the majority would probably be students, potential students coming to the site, trying to learn more about the college, trying to learn more about the expenses behind going to Brooklyn College, how much it costs. Maybe parents are looking at the same thing. So I think that's probably the main demographic that you're looking at is the students and someone interested in going to the school as a student. But obviously there could be lots of other options too. Maybe secondarily or tertiary options. So based off of that, based off of like generally who we have a general sense of who the potential user is going to be for this particular website for this client, then we could do like user archetypes. So kind of make up a person who could be a potential user, just kind of like based off of the general demographics that we think will be the people going to this site and interested in Brooklyn College. So this is one. This is John Smith. He's a senior at Brooklyn Tech. Yeah, like a persona. He is male, 17, lives in Brooklyn, interested in graphic design, probably has to work while going to school to pay for it. Took a lot of art classes while in high school, is really into sports, will be the first of his family to go to college, is really close with his family and doesn't want to go far away from for school. So that's one user archetype, one persona that we can put together to kind of make it feel a little bit more real, like we are designing this for John Smith or Jane Smith, who is a student, who is of a certain age, who lives in a certain place, who has a certain relationship with their family, who has a certain amount of financial constraints. So just kind of making it a little bit more human. So we kind of can put it kind of like a fake face to the name, to the name of the user, to the fake name of the user. It makes it a little easier for us to understand who we are designing for and how to design a website for that group or person. Here's another one. This is Mary Smith, John Smith's mother, female, 45, lives in Brooklyn, makes about $60,000 a year, wants to help her son as much as she can financially for school. So this could be a potential user that comes to our website who is interested in the programs that we offer at Brooklyn College, or that our client offers at Brooklyn College. So this is another person that could potentially be coming to the site. It's another persona that we can put together. Make sense? Okay. So who are our competitors? So who are our clients' competitors? Who is Brooklyn College's competitors? So it'd be like other universities, universities in the New York City area, maybe online universities, online education, trade schools. So there could be a lot of options there. But I'm just going to focus on these. So these are potential competitors. They're universities in the New York City area: NYU, New School, Columbia, Pratt School of Visual Arts, and then Queens College. So some of these are probably going to be more expensive. A lot of these are specifically art schools. So that's something that you need to think about when it comes to looking at your competitors, is how closely they align with your client, in this case, Brooklyn College's offerings, and how much it costs, where they're located, stuff like that. So you want to think of that too when you're looking at competitors. So now that we know some of our competitors, we can take a look at doing competitive visual audits. Again, this is more the designer's role. Once you're like at an agency or design studio, the designer looks at the competitive competition's websites and kind of dissects the design and the interactivity of those sites to understand what's already out there and how we can differentiate ourselves for our clients, for the site that we're going to build, design and build for them. So how can we stand out from the crowd, essentially? So that's why we need to do our research behind our competition. So this is the process that I normally go through when I do a visual audit. So I do a screen grab of the competitors' websites, at least the homepage, ideally like secondary and tertiary pages too. I find the grid, so how the grid system works, like how things are aligned in the design. It's probably a good idea to look at these days, to look at how it looks on a mobile device too, since we're in a mobile first kind of world. So I'd look at both mobile devices and then also on desktop devices. You want to find like the color palette. So what colors are they using? Because if one website, if one school is using red and white for everything, you probably don't want to use the same colors. You want to look at all the typefaces they're using, and the type hierarchy. So like the size of the headers and the subheaders and the body copy. And then you also want to look at media. So what kind of images are they using? What kind of video are they using on their website? Make sense?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So screen grabs. So for a screen grab on a Mac, this is how you do it. So for full screen, it's Command-Shift-3 to get a screen grab of the entire screen. To select an area, it's Command-Shift-4. And then to do a screen grab of just the window, like a browser window, you can do Command-Shift-4 and then click spacebar. And then you can click on any window and I'll do screen grab of that window specifically. So that's how you do screen grab on a computer, on a Mac. So I just took some screen grabs of like the New York's NYU, New York University's homepage, screen grab of Columbia, Parsons, SVA, Pratt, and Queens College. So it's good to look at them kind of as a group too, to see how, if there's any like patterns here. So I see a lot of red, I see a lot of black, I see some purple, some blue, some big type. Yeah, some gradations. So just kind of look at the entire grouping of competitors and see how they look as a group. So once you have the screen grabs, then we can take a look at the grid. So trying to find the grid of at least the home page. To do this, there's a great plugin. It's called Go Full Page. It's a Chrome plugin. So I would recommend checking that out. I linked to it on our class website on the week 2 page. So it's just, again, a Chrome extension. So you need to use this for Chrome. And how it works is when you install it in Chrome, there's a little icon at the top that looks like a camera. When you click that, it just takes a screen grab of the entire website. So it's not just what's currently visible here. It takes a picture of a screen grab of the entire website itself. So when you click that, you get this as the result. So this is the entire website. So you can see everything, not just like the top portion. And then you can click this icon to download a PNG image, or click this one to download a PDF. For the purposes of this project, I would download a PNG. And then open it up in Illustrator or actually Photoshop, most likely, or Illustrator, and then draw in like the grid lines to see where the grid lies. So once you click that, then it'll open up this option to download the image. So this is a plugin that you have to install on Chrome. So it doesn't come standard with Chrome. You have to go to, again, the link is on our class website. I'll show you that in a second. And then if you go to that link, install the Chrome extension, then once it's installed, you might have to like restart the browser. Once it's installed, then you'll see that camera icon up there. So let me just go to the class website real quick. Okay, so if you go to week 2, then there is a link at the bottom under helpful tools. And it's Go Full Page Chrome plugin. Click on that. And then there should be a button that says add. Should be a button here that says add to Chrome. I already have mine, so it says remove on mine. So that's the next thing you want to do. Okay, and then once you download it, you'll have this PNG image, which then you can open up in Photoshop or Illustrator or InDesign or whatever tool you're comfortable with when it comes to drawings, vertical and horizontal lines. And then basically just grid out the design. So this one is like a Queens College site is mostly like 3 columns. That's kind of the main layout. And then on the footer, there's 5 columns here. That kind of breaks the grid a little bit. So this is kind of the basic grid system that's being used for the Queens College website. It's probably a good idea to do this for mobile devices as well. So maybe just do like a screen grab of the mobile version of the site and use that as well on your visual audit. So the next thing we want to look at is like the stylistic design elements that are being used on the website. So what's the color palette, typefaces, type hierarchy, and the type of media being used. For this, I like to either go to in Chrome, go to View and Developer and View Source, and this will show you all the code behind the website. So this allows you to kind of go through the code and look at like the CSS and all the styles attached to this website, as well as the HTML and JavaScript. So the nice thing about the web is that it's all open source, meaning anyone could go to any website and look at the code behind the website, and kind of use it for your own purposes. So that's one technique. It might be a little bit more complicated for you guys since you don't really understand what HTML and CSS is at this point. So another alternative is to use the developer tools. So view, developer, and then developer tools. And that'll pop up a developer window, which you can then more easily look at like the colors and typefaces being used. So I'll demo this in a second, but you can also do a right click on any of these elements and inspect, and this window will pop up, and then go to inspect element, and that'll show you all the CSS attached to that specific element. So it'll pop up this window, either on the bottom or on the right-hand side or left-hand side, show you where that element is in the HTML. And then it'll show you all the CSS styles attached to the element. So it shows you the background color, the padding, the type color, the font size, the font family, etc. So let me just quickly demo that for you too. So let's go to QC site. Okay. So if I wanted to go to view, developer, and then developer tools, so it'll pop up all the developer tools over here. Let's see. Let's go to elements. So this is one way to get to it, and then you can click on each one of these HTML elements in here, and then it'll give you all the CSS styles below. But an easier way to do this is just visually look at something that you want to like find the typeface or the color. Hover over it and do a right click or a control click. You can go to inspect, and then it'll open up that developer console, show you where the HTML is, and then also all the CSS styles around it. So then you can take the color. This is a hex value. This is kind of a color system that we use for the web. We'll talk about that later. You can take the text color, which is white. You can also use like simple words for CSS, like white and black, instead of just doing the hex value. The font size, and then the font family. Scroll down, there's more information. What's that? And then, so this is where you can get all the specific color values and typefaces and sizes for your visual audit. Another cool thing is that in developer tools, this only happens locally on your machine, but and when you reload it, it's going to remove anything you change. You can click on like any of the colors and change the colors here. Kind of play around with the design.
So we technically could change anything on the web of whatever page, right? But that only happens on our devices. Is that what you're saying?
Right. Yeah. So I just changed it to like this burgundy. Let me change it to something like more vibrant. This neon green. So instead of red, I changed it to this neon green color. You can change the type size. You can change any of the CSS styles. So let's make this massive. Like let's do 100 pixels. So it's changing the styles again, just locally on my machine. And then if I reload the page, all that's going to be stripped out, and it's going to go back to what it was. So this is a good way for you to look at the exact color being used for your audits, the exact typeface, the exact type size being used. But it's also a really great way for you to kind of play around with different styles in your own websites to see like quickly see if you like maybe this should be, you know, blue or something. Maybe it should be this color, and kind of visually see if it's right and kind of play around with it. And then once you like that color, then you can kind of copy that value and paste it into your own code, which would make it permanent. So this is just kind of like a sandbox kind of way to play around with the styles in the browser itself. There is a really cool, let me see if I could find it. Let's see. So there's a really, yeah, here it is. There's a really cool site that this artist put together. It's called Windmaker. That kind of plays around with the idea of changing the visual elements on any website. Let's see if it's live. Okay. So it's stud.io/Windmaker. You can basically put in any website in here. So let's just do Queens College, c.cuny.edu. And then you put a postal code. I'll put, let's see. What's my zip code? So that's not a good example because it's not windy here. So basically, is it windy where you guys are outside? Anyone have a lot of wind in their area?
Not at the moment.
Okay. Okay, so basically what this does, I'll show the video instead. So basically what this does is that if you put in a website and then type in a postal code, it's finding the weather data for that postal code and seeing how windy it is in that area. And based off of the wind speed, it's moving all the elements around on that any particular website that you put into it. So if it's really windy in that area, in that zip code, then it's going to move all the elements around on the web page really heavily. So this is just kind of like a way of taking a website and kind of modifying it and playing with it with your own code. And it's kind of the same thing that we just did with the developer tools where we're changing color and typeface just through like a web platform, essentially. Cool. Any questions about that? So again, just right click, inspect element, and then it's going to show you the HTML bit of code. You could also change the HTML too. So if we wanted to say this is like not announcements, we could change the text in the HTML code. I think you could also probably change like, let's try this as a TH. Yeah, so you could change the HTML too, and it'll change in the browser window. So yeah, so that's a good way to find out the colors and typefaces, yada, yada, yada. Okay. So again, using the inspect element tool, it gives us the ability to find the exact color values that the website is being used or website is using. So for the red, it's this hex value. Again, we'll talk about what hex values are. It's basically just a color system. It's similar to RGB, red, green, and blue color systems. It's just kind of what, I don't know why, but it's the standard for colors for the web. So for Queens College, we have this hex value for this red color. We have this gray color. We have black and white, and that's kind of the color scheme for Queens College, the Queens College website. For the typefaces, we have Verdana and Verdana Bold. pretty basic. Type hierarchy, the headers are about like 20 or 18 pixels. Subhead is like 13 pixels, and body copy is like 12 pixels. And then when it comes to the media, we have this rotating module at the top that's like constantly changing and rotating with new images, new content. And then we have some static images and like headshots for like the news section and events section. Cool. So that's pretty much what you guys are going to be doing for discovery, for the understanding the user demographic, and also understanding your competition and what their sites look like. So this is, again, market analysis. These are the questions that we're going to ask. So what is the market? What's kind of like the industry that the client is in? Who is the user? Who is the competitors? And then for the competitive visual audit, we want to do competitors, look at the competitors' websites, doing a screenshot, and find the grid on that screenshot for the homepage, find the color palettes being used on the website, find the typefaces and the type hierarchy, and then also the type of media being used. So I want you to basically do what we just talked about by doing a market analysis and a competitive visual audit by choosing one of the below clients. If you want to do something else, that's fine too. These are just suggestions. And then doing a market analysis for that client. So who is the market / industry? Who's the user? Create one or two or more user archetypes or personas. Who is the competitor? Put together a list of at least 3 competitors. And then do the visual audit by doing a screen grab of the competitor's website homepages. Choose one competitor and overlay the website grid on top of the screenshot. Yeah, use the Chrome plugin below, the Go Full Page Chrome plugin, to screenshot the entire site or entire page. Find the color palette for that one competitor. Identify the typefaces used, the names of the typefaces, the sizes, type hierarchy, and then list any media types used: images, videos, audio, interactive embeds, etc. So that's the in-class assignment. Again, choosing one of these, or if you have another company you're interested in, then you can do that too. And then make a blog post. Once you're done with that, we can make that a homework assignment, but make a blog post when you're done with that, and post that blog post to the Slack channel. Then for homework, I basically want you to do the similar thing, but with whatever site you decide you want to build for this class. So I would suggest doing a portfolio site. You don't have to do a portfolio site if you want to do something else. Like if you, I don't know, your parents own a business or something like that, and they want a website, maybe you can design a website for them. If you want to redesign like an existing site, like a corporation or organization, you could do that as well. So the fallback is just doing a portfolio site if you can't come up with something else that you want to do. And then basically do the same thing. So do the market analysis and visual audit for whatever you're going to do. So if that's a portfolio site, then you want to figure out who is going to be looking at your portfolio site. It's probably going to be, potential employers. Maybe if you're looking at grad school, maybe grad school programs are going to be looking at your site. If you're, I don't know, really interested in, and it's a site around like anime or something like that, then you can think about who's going to be looking at that and interested in that. Yeah. So, and then based off of that, then you can figure out who your competitors are. So if it's a portfolio site, it's probably going to be, someone else in your class, someone trying to find a illustration job or a animation job or a website design or development job. So look at other portfolio sites, other people that do the same kind of work that you're interested in doing. And that could be like your competitive visual audit, looking at other portfolio sites. So again, first do this for a company on that list for the in-class assignment. And then for homework, I want you to do this for whatever website that you plan on building in this class.